Okay, so today we are going to make a potato curry with sesame seeds. And I've already started this meal. The first thing you need to do is get a good quality potato and just boil it, peel it, and cut it up. And I didn't quite cook it all the way. You can see I could squeeze it. It's still firm. And the reason that I stop early is because when I put it on the stove, it's going to cook some more, and I don't want it to be mashed potatoes. But we do want it to be soft. We do want it to break down some because it actually adds to the flavor. So it ends up being in between a mashed potato and a cubed potato. These are butter potatoes, but you could also use a Yukon Gold. I wouldn't really use a red potato or an Idaho potato. It's going to be too starchy, and it's not really going to give you the texture that you want. If you were really being fancy, you could use a purple potato, but it's going to cost a lot more money and take a lot more effort because they're small. These were nice and big when I started. Just tossed them in the saucepan with boiling water and salt, cooked them for 15 minutes, pull them out, peel them, and dice them. If you want, you can peel them first and put them in. It's totally fine. Whatever is easiest for you. Okay, so the key to Indian cooking is really the spice. The actual ingredients are really simple because the farming is limited, right? There's a lot of spinach, a lot of potato, tomato, okra, that you'll see those same foods over and over again made in a lot of different ways. But who doesn't love a good potato, right? Potatoes are yummy. So because we had such a big crowd, you will see that I am going to use a lot more ingredients that are on your recipe. You know, I'm actually making triple the recipe to make sure that we all have enough to eat. So I'm just going to start with a nice big saucepan, and I'm going to use grapeseed oil. So the reason I use grapeseed oil is because it's a good high heat oil. It will go as high as 475 degrees. So if you're trying to make something that needs a crunchy crust, or you need something to cook at a high temperature, then you want to use an oil like this. And olive oil is not going to work in this recipe, even though you may be wanting to do just to make sure that's working. You may want to do an olive oil for the health benefits. If you want that, you're going to add it at the end. But for this, we're just going to use some grapeseed oil. And I'm going to use a decent amount because I really don't want it to stick to the bottom of the pan. And then I'm going to start adding my spices because you want the spices to break down. So we're just going to add them directly to the oil. So we're going to start with some cumin seed. And I guess I will measure, although I'm normally a throw it in kind of cook. So this is 3 teaspoons. And there we go. Another thing you can do is put it in your hand. Whenever you're working with seeds, is try and break them up a little bit in your fingers before you add them to the oil, and already you can smell it, right? As soon as you start rubbing it in your hands, the more you can get your hands in your food, the more you're gonna like it, right? And it's more fun. You'll like cooking. We're gonna use cumin seed a lot today. It's a staple in Indian cooking. Then we're gonna use some ground coriander, although you could use coriander seed too. If you wanna use a lot of seeds, you can do that. And let me measure. It's 1.5 teaspoons. And again, you know, you can pretty much eye it up. Doesn't have to be exact. And these spices aren't hot. Cumin isn't hot, coriander isn't hot. It just adds a lot of warmth to the food, but it's not spicy to the tongue. And then I'm gonna add the brown mustard seed. And same, just gonna stick it in my hand. It's fun, rolls around, almost like a poppy seed. So this is going to create a lot of fiber in your meal, right? Because they're not going to really break down that much. They're going to stay pretty much shaped. And I'm just going to get them coated. And I'm just going to cook it down until I can really start smelling it and seeing it start to combine. And this could take a minute or two. Can't really rush it. But you do want to keep stirring it because the oil is bubbling. It's really hot. And you don't want to burn anything, and the only way to prevent that is to just keep moving it around. I do. I have it on the highest heat that I can put it on. This is an electric burner. I normally cook on gas, but even on gas, same. I would have it as high as it would go. And this is looking great. I'll see if you can see it. It's just kind of like a little mash going on there. Okay, and then I'm gonna add the potatoes. Potatoes need a lot of oil and a lot of salt, or else it's gonna be a very bland meal, even with the spices. There's something about the oil and the salt that just opens up the flavor of the potato, which is why French fries are so popular. And except for really the cutting of the potato, and I'm going to do a chili, there's really very little prep. Right, so it's a fast meal. And one thing I do is I almost always, I know potatoes are supposed to be like the enemy, but I almost always have potatoes already cooked in my refrigerator. And I use them as a snack all the time. So a lot of times I'll come home, I'm like, what am I going to make? I already have the potatoes cooked. I'm just going to stick them right in the pan with some spices. And I'm all, 15 minutes later, I could be eating this easily. And I can see this is a little dry, so I am going to add just a little bit more oil to this. And who here is afraid of oil? Right? There are more problems with people who have too low fat of a diet than have too high fat of a diet. Right? You need a certain amount of good quality fat in your diet. People don't realize we need cholesterol. All of our hormones are made from cholesterol. A lot of our different body systems are dependent on cholesterol. So as of 2006, in the United States, you're more likely to die of a heart attack from a low cholesterol than a high cholesterol. And that's because people are eating very low-fat diets, and you're not getting enough good quality fat. And you can see it's starting to have some character. Let me move this for you guys. Starting to see the seeds come together. Okay, and I'm going to turn down the heat on that a little bit while I cut the chili. So we're going to use a couple of different kinds of peppers today. This is a cherry pepper, and this is one of the most mild peppers that you can cook with. So if you're low on the hot spice meter, this is a good chili to start with. But whenever I work with chilies, I use gloves because, yeah, the heat in it, if you touch your face or you touch your eyes, it's going to burn. Okay, so I'm just going to start by cutting the end and giving myself a flat surface, okay? And then, is this not one that I was up here sharpening and then I lost track of what I sharpened and what I didn't sharpen. So, who here sharpens their knives regularly? Yep, I sharpen my knives almost every time I cook, right? Just takes a minute, and it's the difference between having injury and not having injury. Most injuries are caused by the fact that your knives are not sharp enough, so they slide off and they go into you. They're still sharp enough to cut you, but they need to be sharper. So, let's see. No, this is just tough. Okay, and most of the heat is in the seed. So I'm gonna take the seeds out of this. But if you had somebody who really liked hot spicy, especially with a cherry pepper, you would wanna, keep the seeds in there. But we're gonna have a hot dish with the zucchini later. So we're gonna keep this on the mild side so we make sure everybody has something to eat. And I'm just using the tip of the knife to go around where I can see it's connected. And if I was at home, I would just rinse it under the sink. But let me try this knife. Has anybody seen these knives? They're Recon knives, and the sharpener is in here. So every time you take it out, it sharpens the knife for you. So sometimes you need a smaller knife, like this is giving me a little bit of a hard time. So I'm just hoping that I can get it cut. And I really want to cut this small so nobody gets a big bite of it. There we go. It's also going to add a little bit of color to the dish. There we go. Again. The smaller you cut it, the milder the flavor is going to be. The bigger you leave it, the stronger the flavor is going to be. Okay, that looks good to me. And I think what I'm going to do is grab myself another cutting board. Okay, you see it come flying at your feet, just like ignore it. Okay. All right, so just going to mix that in. Starting to smell the potatoes cooking down. Okay. Next, we are going to add sesame seeds. Sesame seeds are high in omega-3. And this recipe calls for 2 tablespoons, but again, since we're making a bigger recipe, I'm going to add a little bit more. And it's still a little dry, so I'm going to add a little bit of water. Beautiful. Okay, next we're going to use some lemon rind. And so I know I'm also going to need the juice. So whenever you need the juice out of the lemon, you just roll it and it kind of separates the skin a little bit from the fruit on the inside, so you're going to get more juice out of the lemon. And then I'm going to grate it. Most people are going to use this teeny tiny little holes, and it's going to take you forever. I am macho. I'm using the big, and I'm gonna get a lot more bang for my buck by doing that. A lot more bang for my buck. And you can see it's just falling in there. How much easier is that? I can smell that too. Okay, and then I'm going to cut my lemon. And you have a couple choices. This is one of my faves. It's from the dollar store. And it just has a lid and the juicing part. But this fits in here. And it collects all the seeds. You can see it goes all the way to the skin for $1. Can't beat that. And we're going to see if we can get 6 teaspoons out of this. Okay. This is an organic lemon, but it's not one of the most important things to buy organic. They don't use a lot of pesticides while growing lemons, and it doesn't get a lot in the skin either, but you know, whoop, I do it anyway. There we go. Okay. And now we're going to add the color, which is the turmeric, and the flavor, which is the chili powder. That's really what makes it a curry. Most curries are a combination of coriander, cumin, and chili powder. Sometimes it'll have cinnamon, sometimes it won't. Sometimes it'll have other ingredients like the mustard, sometimes it won't. But it usually starts with those 3 ingredients. So I don't see it in here, but I'm putting it in here, actually. See, we had the chilies, but chili powder, again, is not hot. It's not the same as doing a cayenne pepper or a flaked pepper. And then turmeric is what's going to make it that rich yellow color that you're used to seeing when you see Indian food. And this is turmeric is antiviral. So if you're prone to viruses or if you have a virus, this is a great herb or spice to just add to anything. Just add it to your brown rice. You can make a tea out of it, and it helps you fight the virus. So we used a cherry chili pepper. When people talk about chilies, it's really just a generic term for peppers. So we used a cherry, which is mild, but then there's also like a habanero, which is a very hot pepper. Jalapeno is kind of in between that. A chipotle, how many people, you know, we have a restaurant around here called Chipotles, is actually just a dried jalapeno pepper. And you can see I'm being gentle with trying to mix it because I want it to break down a little bit, but I don't want it to break down too much. Again, I'm going to add a little bit of water. And if you want, you can experiment with this and just use a curry powder if you want to try that. but I really like the seeds in it. And always taste it. And that is pretty good. And so that is our potato curry with sesame seeds.